Welcome to another episode of Drastic Talks. I'm Courtney and I'm here with Michelle Killoran. Michelle is a principal at Omers Ventures. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Courtney.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Happy
Pretty
New Year.
good. Happy New Year. Why don't we start with just a little bit about you? So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what you do at Omers.
Sure. So Omers Ventures is a pension plan that's based in Ontario for municipality workers, and I'm part of the venture arm. And we are a multi-stage, multi-sector venture fund, offices in Toronto, San Francisco, and also London. And we look at all sectors of technology, Series A, B, and C. Our checks are typically 5 to 25 million. I focus on PropTech for the fund. And so that means I look at residential real estate, commercial real estate, and also anything related to construction. I've been with Omers Ventures for almost 5 years now. I'm Canadian, so I grew up just outside of Toronto, and I was in the Toronto office for a few years and then moved to the Bay Area to help launch this office about 2 years ago. And I'm still currently sheltering here. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, it's pretty locked down here in Toronto, at least for the next few weeks or months, so we'll see. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Courtney. I'm a principal at Alate Partners, so I also invest in real estate technology, early stage across North America. And I have the pleasure to talk to Michelle often about companies we're seeing and trends. We invest a little bit earlier, so it's great to always talk to you about what we're each seeing, and we invest hopefully in some companies together soon. So I think what we were thinking for this conversation was to reflect a little bit on 2020 and talk about what we're both thinking about for 2021. So I think let's start there. So if we think back about 2020, what were some of the most interesting themes or lessons learned that you saw through your portfolio or in the industry?
When March happened and COVID-19 came, I think all PropTech investors, definitely myself, kind of held their breath, not sure what to expect during this time. I mean, this risk of not going into people's homes or not going into the office was never really something you thought about. But what was exciting is to see a lot of the technology companies, this digital option already existed for many of these very manual processes. So it was actually, there's a lot of opportunity for technology to make a difference. And also we still saw transactions and things still continued. So I think that was overall in the whole year, I think resilience really sums it up for a lot of these companies, and some positives could come out of that. One area that I spent a lot of time in, and I guess one lesson or interest was around affordability and how the affordability crisis and housing affordability, how technology can play a big role there. And we made an investment early in the year in a company called Landed, which is a San Francisco-based company that helps teachers and healthcare workers purchase homes by providing down payment assistance. So our view is people want to own homes, but it's more expensive than ever to do so. And when we think of these essential workers in our communities, I think the value that they provide is also stronger than ever today. So really excited to back this company. So and that is, we saw it as a real focus on improving accessibility to the asset class. And Courtney, I know you also were interested in this area. Would love your thoughts on this space too.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we also invested in a company in this space called PadSplit. So that was our first investment over the summer. Our first investment post-COVID. So that was an interesting experience because we invested in the team without having met them, and we still haven't met the team in person. So we look forward to that. But we did a lot of research and spoke to a lot of people on this theme. PadSplit is a co-living option that's focused on affordable housing. So while it's not specifically focused on essential workers and teachers the way Landed is, it does tend to attract sort of similar type roles, people who are living on incomes, anywhere, like I think an average of 20 to 30,000 dollars a year. And so that's a large part of the population. And when we think about what are the housing options that are available, the affordable housing that's offered by the government is great, and there's incredible offerings, but there's not enough. And affordability is a huge issue. We think that looking at, we were hoping and we thought the Biden administration would be a positive sort of tailwind for companies in this space. It's a huge issue that cities across North America and the world face, and every city is trying to figure out how to do it. And we thought the Pad Split team was incredible. They are a impact focused business, so they really do care about the people that they're serving, and they're trying to create a solution that works for landlords as well as people in the community who are looking for a long-term or sort of an in-between solution. And so, I think that there's a ton of opportunity around affordable housing, and developers, cities, everyone is trying to figure out how do they tap into it. And I think there's going to be a number of ways, both on the private side, the access side with things like Landed, as well as the public and the government entities trying to figure out how do they support other alternatives to create and increase the supply. And the CMHC is doing a ton to focus on how do we increase supply here in Canada.
It's great to see all that government support for these initiatives too. So I think that'll help move the needle faster.
Absolutely. So I think you touched on this in the intro. Another trend that we had talked about was around just the huge increase of a shift towards digital. So digital solutions that already exists, companies recognizing and speeding up roadmaps to accelerate their move to digital. So we're seeing that across construction. I know that's a place you've focused on, so I'll let you touch on that. And in residential, that's a huge one where people are trying to figure out how do we do digital showings, how do we move to, if they haven't already, move to more easy, intuitive digital solutions to communicate with their renters and their resident community, to help connect people and rethinking what do building amenities look like, how do we move from maybe yoga classes to other types of ways that they can provide value to the residents in their building, and just really thinking about how do you augment the staff in your team in your buildings to be the most effective and really create a much more digital oriented rental experience from the beginning to the end.
Totally agree. I think all of those things were so necessary, and some of the technology already existed, so it was a great tailwind. In the construction space, so this sector is notorious for being low on the technology adoption scale. The productivity improvements compared to other industries has also lagged. So this is one area where having to not be on the job site, having less workers on the job site, I think really spurred some adoption of technology that really can make a difference. One area in construction specifically is related to transparency and data. So we saw a lot of momentum and excitement around companies that are doing, say, photo capture, video capture, to really share with other stakeholders what's going on the site. And I think that was more important than ever now that people were not necessarily visiting. And even in this area, we're also seeing opportunities just from digitizing workflows. So there may be a manual process when you have time and materials, change orders, all these moving around through different people. And now seeing technology get adopted that can help improve this, make it digital on your phone, and also remove some of the human contact that we haven't been able to have for a while.
Yeah, and I think that what's most interesting is that a lot of this technology will be as important when we're able to be back at the site. So it provides, another option or alternative for other people to see what's going on, to have transparency, and just I think that in general it creates more options that are better and allows us to create more data and have more. Allows everyone to focus on the pieces that are most important to do in person, and then leverage digital tools wherever they can. So in terms of 2020, I don't think you can talk about any lessons learned or trends without talking about the future of work or the changes in work. So, one of the other areas is around sort of the emergence of the home office and work from home. So curious what you've seen there or thoughts, any reflections on that.
It was definitely an adjustment. And I think at the beginning, when we think about technology, people are just uncertain about the timing. If this is short term and we're going to go back to the office, I think a lot of the solutions we are seeing, we're very manual. Just elevator protocols, scheduling, moving people's desks around was what the conversation was. And then it shifted to more long term. And as people started seeing this as maybe lasting longer than a couple months, also being prepared for the future, how do you differentiate? That's when we saw a lot of technology come into play. I think for landlords that started to merge between health and real estate. So now making sure that people are being traced correctly, or having certain checks to make sure people are entering the buildings, they are healthy and safe, I think became a big topic for the office. And I think that that's still continuing as we all try to figure out what that means. And I think it also meant that we need our home office a little more permanent than we thought. So I think people have really started to make changes either through remote work tools to really make this possible. And I know, Courtney, you have an investment in your portfolio that kind of manages the home office.
Yeah, I mean, Branch is an office furniture company, and when they launched in 2019, they were focused on creating and furnishing great places to work for businesses. So really solving the gap to help small and medium-sized businesses, even large businesses, find affordable, ergonomic, sort of elegant furniture solutions. And so when March came along and everyone was moving out of the office, this was a company that was a year old. And so, we were looking at what's going to happen here. No one's going to furnish offices. How many months without revenue could this be? And looking at some pretty bleak forecasts. But this team is absolutely incredible, and they pivoted from or added another line and went to D2C and helping people furnish their home office. So they were directly reaching individuals, as well as working with companies like Google and Shopify and others who were giving stipends to furnish your office. And so it's pretty interesting to see the shift and to see, how over time, how long it took people to order an office chair. I mean, I think that was one of one of the many pain points for people, realizing that sitting on the couch or sitting on a just like regular chair for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day was not good enough. So, that company is really interesting because now we think that there's going to be whatever happens with the future of office. I think that they're well positioned because, as you mentioned, I think people are looking for more flexibility, and so expecting that more people will have home offices than ever before. And so they'll continue to see demand on the home office side. But as people go back to work, there's also going to be companies looking for flexible solutions. And so they're working with landlords who are seeing who are looking to furnish vacant spaces or smaller spaces and create a more flexible offering that competes with some of the flex space. So Branch is working with sort of all of the stakeholders to create different office experiences. And we think that the home office market will grow and become much bigger than it was before, as well as people will return back to the office.
Totally agree. This is a Branch chair.
Nice.
I decided to do it in September. So I also held out for a little while before I made the purchase. I'm really happy I did.
This is clearly not, and I'm really not happy with my ergonomic setup where I am right now. So looking forward to get back to my proper ergonomic Branch setup. So 3 trends, sort of looking back or lessons learned from 2020, looking lots around opportunities and affordability, just a total move to digital, and everyone rethinking their processes and digital processes, and then the emergence of the home office. So looking to 2021, curious what predictions you have for what trends we might see or what kind of technology might be demanded.
I think the office is still a very hot topic and one we're always thinking about what's next. And one area that I've heard through discussions is this transition of, instead of the just automatic assumption employees are coming to the office, now some employers are thinking about how do you entice employees in. And I think that's going to be a shift we're going to see because, as you mentioned, We already set up our home office and it's working pretty well. So what is the benefits of the office? There's collaboration, but are there other things too that can really stand out and differentiate based on the space that you have? And so some predictions around different ways of using the space that I've heard, like pop-up restaurants, or even turning it into gyms, or maybe a speakeasy bar, or maybe you're getting your healthcare services there. So maybe there's pop-up doctors' offices or any other wellness solutions to just really provide better benefits for your employees in a different way based on the space that you have. So I think that's one area. When you think about the office, I think we're going to see some really interesting models around how to use the space differently and flexibly based on needs. I think also this co-working aspect and flexibility will also be a trend, and I anticipate to see a new wave of co-working, like co-working 2.0, that maybe looks different than by desk. Maybe it's by day, and maybe it's in neighborhoods versus downtowns. What about you? What do you think about the office?
Many similar thoughts. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So many similar thoughts. We're seeing a lot of companies that are trying to figure out working on flexible solutions in neighborhoods, as well as, whether it's overflow solutions or just flexible solutions for landlords. I think we're already seeing and hearing about landlords signing deals where, it's a long-term lease with a flexible component of it, or getting some flex space. So, I think that companies are looking for flexibility right now, and landlords are trying to figure out what are the best ways to attract people back to the office. What do they need to provide? And obviously, safety and air quality is something that is a higher sort of tenant demand and amenity than ever before. But to your point, I think there's other new sort of amenities and services that landlords could be thinking about and are thinking about. I also think that it's going to be very interesting to see how companies evolve and what hybrid means. So we hear, when you see these polls, a lot of polls say, I want flexibility, or I want to work mostly remote, or I want to work some 3 to 2, 3, 4 days in the office. But what does that actually mean practically, and how does it actually impact the space? Does it mean that people move away from assigned desks? And if so, then do companies need different kinds of booking tools to communicate to one another where they are, or booking desks, booking space, booking rooms? How does that work? So I think that a lot of companies are going to figure that out, and technology for the office and for sort of managing employees as well as visitors is going to be more important than ever. So one of our portfolio companies, Eden, just launched the visitor management and employee management check-in tool. So, I think that companies who weren't using one of these platforms before are going to be thinking about, how do you make it easy to do COVID or any health screening tests, but also, how do you communicate where people are and when they should be in and book space, if that's the direction you're going. And on the other side, I think that companies are still learning how to do remote. Like, there are companies that have been remote for a long time. There's companies that have moved to more of a remote first environment and way of working. But I think for a lot of people and a lot of companies, they're kind of just doing the same thing as they did before. And it works mostly, but not entirely. And if we're going to work more remotely or more flexibly, or have colleagues that are more spread out, there's actually better tools and better ways of working that we can adopt. So we're starting to hear companies thinking about knowledge management more. So how do we store and find information? How do you send videos of a quick, like how to find something in a folder, how to do a specific formula in Excel, and being able to share that much more easily and quickly. And I think that these kinds of tools, video messages versus Slack chats, I think these types of tools are going to be valuable regardless of what environment what companies choose and people choose. So I think that, I'm excited that people are rethinking how we work, and hopefully it is an opportunity for all of us to create better workplaces that are more productive, regardless of where people are located.
Totally agree.
So one of the other trends we kind of touched on that we were talking about is sort of a way of home ownership. And, I think there's been for the last 10 years, conversations of, do millennials want to own homes? Do people care about this? Are they renters for life, or are they just delaying? So maybe you can share a little bit of your thoughts around what you're seeing on a home ownership front.
Yeah, happy to. So I put out a poll on Twitter yesterday just to see actually what's going on, because a lot of the conversations I've had have been very polarizing. Some people are saying I've sped up buying a home. Other people are saying I'm going to take this remote opportunity and travel and kind of be more flexible. The poll said, does the pandemic, when you think about home ownership, did it speed your thought process around owning a home up, slow it down, or no change? And majority said no change, which I was surprised. So 45% no change, 36% sped it up, and 18% slowed it down. So that it's quite mixed what's going on. But when we think about home ownership and the increases, or people are able to purchase homes in more affordable places if they're able to have more flexibility on work, one area that we're really excited about is just really thinking about the new wave of what a mortgage will look like. So going back to lending, I think the pandemic really shed a light on some of the processes that are very manual, that are also very outdated, that we need to change. So how do you find the valuation of the property quickly when you're trying to get a pre-approval? The length of these mortgages, like there's not a lot of innovation even in the actual end product that we've seen yet. So this is an area where we're really excited about just thinking about what does the lending aspect of residential real estate look like in the future. We've looked a lot on the equity side and seen innovation on the home cap table when it comes to the owner and the owner's piece of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, 80% is the lender and the mortgage provider. And that space is still fascinating. And I think it's an area, there's a lot of really great companies and funding going into it. So there are some really great large companies that I really admire, like better.com. So I'm just excited to see what else is out there in that space this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did buy a place during the pandemic. I was
Okay.
looking before, and it was I in March. I thought, okay, there's no way, we're going to wait. But we did end up going through with it later on in the fall, and the experience was quite manual. So, I mean, I think that even some of the solutions that are exist elsewhere in the UK and the US are still coming to Canada. And so we're seeing, there's tons of improvement here as well as elsewhere. But, I think that the pandemic, as everyone says, accelerated trends related to bringing the mortgage and appraisal process online, what kind of regulations are required, what the banks required, and as they started to use or are moving towards more digital enabled closing processes, digital enabled appraisal, trying to move this information so that it is digital and can be shared and it can be accessed by multiple parties versus just PDFs, printing and scanning documents back. I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve the process, but also, to your point, actually think about what opportunities are there to innovate within the financial products themselves. And we have seen a number of companies that are looking at that, both from, you talked about the sort of co-ownership side. There's also, companies that are trying to think about what does that look like for people who are borrowing on the home that they have, focused on seniors, as well as just, everything in between. How do you create a better experience and as well potentially innovate within the product? So I think that the last trend that we were talking about, or prediction that we were thinking about for 2021, related to the merging of climate tech and PropTech. Maybe you can share a little bit of your thoughts there.
Sure. So this is an area, I actually have a colleague that's joining our team next week, who will be kind of spending a lot more time in climate. But this is an area we've talked about a lot, and it's very well known now and agreed on that we are in a climate crisis. And real estate is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. And so what does that mean? So on the commercial side, I think we're going to see even more movement to green buildings, sustainable buildings, management of energy in certain ways. On the residential side, we're also going to see that. So we are really excited about new types of energy models. for heating and cooling your homes. We predict, especially with the climate crisis that we're in today, cooling your home may be a bigger problem than heating your home in the future. So what does that look like? Who's offering solutions that are sustainable, but also are economical? So they also provide for the homeowner, it makes sense to improve the value of your asset. Maybe it's valuing the types of HVAC systems you have, or if you look at geothermal, for example, is another area that's a more sustainable type of offering, but that also provides savings for the owner as well. So I expect to see a lot of movement there in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this was a trend that existed before, but it does seem in the last 12 months that there's been more and more pressure on landlords and pension funds and all of the stakeholders to focus on the impact of climate. We're seeing cities and large companies take a stance on when they're going to be net zero or moving toward net zero, and actually different years, whether it's 2030 or 2050, people are actually starting to put a line in the sand and work towards what does that actually mean. Impact investing is bigger in Europe, and I think anyone who has European LPs, we're starting to see more ESG requirements, or more capital that's flowing towards impact, and companies that are focused on, to exactly your point, companies that are able to not to be profitable and to focus on profit without sacrificing profit, but also doing things that are good. And I think we're going to see more government money flow there. And that includes everything. Like in Canada, there's a company called Brainbox that's focusing on autonomous HVAC and trying to improve HVAC in buildings. Carbon Cure that is reducing carbon in the concrete industry. I think there's examples at sort of every area, and there's going to be more investment and more interest from governments, pension funds, tenants. Sort of you're feeling it from all sides, where people are trying to focus on what is the impact of the environment, but also to sort of previous points, how do we make our cities more inclusive? How do we make them more affordable? And what are the opportunities there? And how do real estate owners and technology providers position themselves to be early at this? And I think that there's sort of tailwinds that will carry this forward. So we're also looking in this space and trying to understand what business models make sense to invest in now for the future.
It's exciting that some venture investors that are more tech focused are shifting their attention here too. I think that'll also lead the way for some really great ideas to flow and some kind of new companies to be built this year.
And it'll be interesting to see the impact of some of these sort of larger companies like the Shopifys and Microsofts and everyone who are providing money or investing in tech directly, or looking for technology solutions that impact climate. And so, hopefully that, along with family offices and accelerators, and as well as venture funds that are putting capital towards it, we can actually help support those early stage founders that are focused on these areas that have such a huge potential to impact sort of the world that we live in. So. And as you mentioned, real estate is a big contributor, both on the construction side and the building management. So I think that there's an opportunity, but also a responsibility to figure out how we can reduce the impact. So with that, I think that we talked about 3 different areas for 2021, thinking about the future of the office and what technology and services will support a more flexible work environment, a wave of home ownership and the technology that supports that around mortgages and the digital appraisal and different mortgage or lending products, as well as sort of this merging of climate tech and PropTech and opportunities at the intersection. So we'll be watching out for those. And if there's companies that are in that area, I know Michelle and I would both love to talk to you and learn more. Michelle, if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter, so you can find me there. Always happy to chat with people on that. My Twitter handle is at Michelle Killoran, Miche. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the other easiest place.
Yeah, for me too, LinkedIn is probably the easiest place to get in touch. So please reach out. And Hope to hear from many of you around solutions that you're building. So thanks for tuning in. You can find more from Drastic Talks on the Drastic Summit YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast apps, or visit their website at drasticsummit.com/talks. So thanks to Drastic Talks for having us, and thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thank you.